Chapter 15 begins talking about conflict. It defines conflict as a process that begins when one party perceives that another party has negatively affected or is about to negatively affect something the first party cares about. Okay? The traditional view, according to the book, is that conflict is harmful and is to be avoided. The human relations view, though, is it's a normal part of the human experience. So, which do you believe? Avoided or normal part of the human experience? Okay. The interactionist view is that it encourages conflict. Now, the book also talks about two different types of conflict: functional versus dysfunctional. Is it leading somewhere? Is it productive? Or is it just causing people to get upset, angry, and to fight? Okay, so an organization like Apple is famous for a functional conflict, where they really get the best out of their people by causing them to argue and defend what they believe. But then I've also seen plenty of dysfunctional families in my work with children's services that conflict wasn't doing anything but harming. So it can be either. Okay. Relationship conflict focuses on the interpersonal relationships, whereas process conflict relates to how people get work done. Okay. What is the conflict process? Stage 1 is the potential opposition or incompatibility. At this point, it's just the opportunity for conflict, and conflict does not need to necessarily resolve. Okay? It depends on whether there's good communication, depends on the structure of the organization, and it depends on personal variables. What kind of people are trying to? Is this someone who's trying to avoid conflict at any cost, or someone who really is always itching for it? Okay? Stage 2 goes into cognition and personalization. This is where one or both parties must realize that there is a source of conflict and that the persons must personalize that conflict to give it a source. What that means is one person has to realize, in order for there to be conflict, hey, we disagree on this, and feel strongly emotionally about it, that they're willing to fight rather than just give in on it. Stage 3, intentions. What do the given parties want to do about the conflict? They need to decide. These are their intentions. Do they want to compete or collaborate, which would probably avoid the conflict? Do they just want to avoid it and forget the whole thing ever existed? Does one side want to just accommodate and give the other person what they want? Or can they find a very natural and easy compromise? And then step 4, behavior. And that is what actions are taken by both parties. How does the conflict look? This is the part where it decides whether it's functional or dysfunctional. Now, a few other interesting things that may go on. Are conflict management strategies used? Do people use problem-solving techniques? Are they subordinating their goals? Are they agreeing, meaning are they agreeing on what the common goal is first and then trying to figure out how to achieve it? Or is it winning at all costs? Are they trying to expand their resources by bringing someone else or something else in that may help them avoid the conflict? Are they using avoidance? Are they trying to smooth it out? This is somebody who's trying to use emotional appeals to get both sides to walk away from the conflict. Is there somebody trying to help them with the compromise? Is there authority, a boss, a parent, or something that is stepping in and telling them how it's going to be and stopping the conflict from happening? Okay? By altering the human variable, you alter the structure of the variables and the outcomes. Okay? Different people, different outcomes. The more functional the people, generally the more functional the outcomes, and the more dysfunctional people, the more dysfunctional the outcomes. Okay. How do you create functional conflict? What you can usually do is reward the dissenters. Reward people who are willing to say, I don't agree. And punish conflict avoiders. People who lie about their feelings about it just to avoid the conflict. Okay, this is going to create a place where people feel comfortable saying how they really feel, and that positive things come out of that conflict. You need to create an environment where people are willing to accept criticism. Okay? Okay, the book then shifts into negotiations. Starts by talking about the types of bargaining, distributive bargaining. That's where there's a fixed amount of the resources, and we're all negotiating who gets it. Okay, we've ordered a pizza, we're all figuring out who's going to get how much of the pizza. Then there's integrated bargaining, and this is where we look for win-win scenarios on all occasions. Okay, there's not enough pizza, but perhaps there's salad, soda, or dessert of some kind, so we can all figure out a way where we're happy. The negotiating process. Step 1, preparing and planning. This is where you're figuring out what it is that you want, they're figuring out what they want, and what you're willing to give up. Step 2, the definition of the ground rules. This is not always happened, but it's good when it does. It's what kind of ground rules are people going to agree on? What's fair to do? What's not fair to do? How long are we talking? What's going to happen if we can't come to a compromise? Defining how the rules of what's going to take place. Clarification and justification. This is where we're explaining to the others what we want and justifying, explaining why we want it. Okay? Then it will move on to the bargaining and problem solving. Okay? Now this is where we're making compromises, we're talking about different solutions, we're finding a way to solve the problems that both sides are happening. And finally, when it's agreed, closure and implementation. We make sure that we both agree, we come up with a common language, and then we begin implementing whatever solution that we came up with. Okay, issues in negotiation. Number 1, people can be moody. People's different personality traits. You may find the other person annoying or not want to be around them, and that can come through in the negotiations and make them more difficult. Gender differences. Okay, this is not a big part of this class, but it was mentioned in the book here, so I'll bring it up. Women are less confident when negotiating, and they're less satisfied with the outcomes. It doesn't mean they're worse negotiators, but time after time when it's been studied, if you asked women how they feel during the negotiations, they give scores that are less high than the men who are given the same studies. Okay? Now, less satisfied with the outcome. What does that mean? That means no matter what the outcome is, it's not saying women are worse negotiators. It's not saying that at all. Okay? Even coming out with the exact same outcome, women tend to be less satisfied with it. They're always thinking they could have done better, which probably gets back to the less confident side of it. Okay. Cultural differences. Some cultures, and the book pointed out the French, really enjoy conflict, and therefore they really enjoy that heavy, loud negotiating part of it. Whereas the Japanese do not, and then it tends to happen behind closed doors, tends to be slow, tends to make sure that everybody wants to save face. People don't actually ever say no, they just don't ever come to an agreement. Okay, which gets to the next point of the book. Some cultures say no differently. Some have no problem with pauses. Okay, you need to understand how it is that people say no. For instance, getting back to the Japanese, they'll never exactly say no, they'll just never say yes. And you need to understand that the lack of yes means no. Okay? Some cultures feel like they need to fill the silence. The East Coast American culture tends to be one of that, whereas others are very comfortable when there's silence. Okay? Now, do you want to bring in a third party? You want to bring in someone to help to create success between the two parties in a negotiation? That's up to you, but there's 4 different kinds that the book points out. The first one is the mediator. This is using someone who reasons and persuades the sides to agree. Second one's an arbitrator. This is someone who tries to help both sides agree, but has the ability to dictate a solution if the sides won't agree. A conciliator is the third kind. That provides formal and informal communication. Like they have no formal authority, but they just help the sides talk. And finally, a consultant. And this is a skilled and impartial third party who attempts to facilitate problem solving through communication and analysis. It's like the conciliator, but with a level of expertise and sometimes even a level of authority. So, not to the authority of the arbitrator to be able to say, hey, this is going to be it, but maybe he can make the people sit down and talk. So, anyways, that was chapter 15. Hope you enjoyed.